18 years have passed since this nightmare unfolded, and even now, the memories cling like shadows I can't quite shake off. Some of the details have blurred with time, but the scars, both seen and unseen, are still there. If you're interested in hearing more about my story or others like it, check out our /homophobic_stories. But here's how it all began. You can probably guess from the title, I'm gay. I had come out to my best friend first, and they urged me to tell my parents. My dad found out before my mom, and that was nerve-wracking enough, but telling my mom? That was a whole other level of terror. She wasn't just strict, she was mean in ways that cut deeper than words. Even at 10 years old, I knew she was capable of cruelty, but I had no idea how far she would go. The day I decided to come out to her, I walked into the living room, feeling every nerve in my body light up. My heart was hammering, but I was determined to do this. I sat down, facing her. She glanced up from whatever she was doing, barely acknowledging my presence. "Mom, I need to tell you something," I said, my voice already trembling. "This better be important," she snapped, not even looking at me. "It is. My words caught in my throat, and before I could finish, she cut me off with this cold, piercing look that froze me in place. She didn't just interrupt, she stormed at me, her voice rising, drowning out any courage I had left. I tried again, but the words wouldn't come. Overwhelmed, I left the room, tears stinging my eyes as she hurled insults and flipped me off like I was trash. I tried to regroup overnight, convincing myself I'd get it right the next day. The next morning, I walked back into that room, heart still bruised but ready to try again. "Mom," I started, my voice shaky but resolute. "What do you want now?" she barked, not even pretending to care. "What I was trying to say yesterday. I'm gay." The room went dead silent, like the world had stopped spinning for just a second before her rage ignited. "You are what?" she screamed, her voice so sharp it felt like a knife to my gut. My response was barely a whisper, a mumble drowned in fear, but it didn't matter. She didn't need to hear me. She was already on a tirade, spitting venom about how I'd never be successful, how everyone would hate me, how I was worthless. And then, the threat that crushed whatever was left of my spirit, she'd put me up for adoption if I didn't straighten out. That's when the abuse truly began. It started with words, but it quickly escalated. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table, tears streaming down my face as I tried to choke down a sandwich. Without warning, she stormed out, cigarette in hand, and burned me on the arm. The searing pain made me jump up, but the sting of betrayal hurt more. I ran to my room and stared at the angry red mark. I thought it would be there forever, a permanent reminder of her hatred, but it faded in 8 days. I wish the emotional scars had healed that quickly. There were more incidents, too many to count. While my dad was at work, it was open season on me. Plates smashed against walls, missing my head by inches. Boiling water from the kettle, hurled at me, just missing my skin. She'd grab my wrist so hard I'd feel bruises the next day, her grip like a vice squeezing the air out of my lungs. One day, as she had me cornered, my dad walked in. He saw everything. That confrontation was explosive. They screamed at each other until the walls seemed to shake, and it ended with my dad storming out to file for divorce. That was the beginning of the end with her, but not the end of my story. She lingered in my life, her presence like a ghost haunting the corners of my mind, but the worst was finally over. This chapter was brutal, but it wasn't the last. There's more, some of it less violent, some of it just as painful, but that's for another time. For now, this is where I leave it. Thanks for listening.